and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be talking about homeschool family subjects. Hi, my name is Autumn. Welcome to Our Bird Nest. Today, we're going to be talking about homeschool family subjects, and this is something that's really fun. This is something that can be really fun for homeschooling and make it completely unique to public school. Because when it comes to certain topics at a certain age, I realize that there's caveats and things when kids get to maybe like high school age where they're needing to get certain credits to get a high school diploma or to qualify for scholarships. That's kind of different, and that is not a phase that I am at yet. At this early elementary age, so I'm talking more like kindergarten through like 6th grade. That's kind of what we're talking right now. And if you have older kids, I know that people do this with older kids as well, but this is the kind of age range I'm talking about at this point in time. So homeschool family subjects, this is generally going to include things that fall under the category of science, history, geography, religion, world cultures, things like that, where generally we can have an open family discussion at a table, on the couch. It is more of a family topic, and it is not necessarily something that has to be broken down by like, this is 1st grade science, this is 2nd grade history, this is 3rd grade history. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something that's a little bit more broad, and we can kind of cast a broader net over multiple grades at the same time. That is why oftentimes in the homeschool community, you will hear things like history, science, geography, and religion referred to as family subjects, okay? And you might also hear the phrase table subjects or desk subjects, and sometimes this could include family subjects. A lot of times that's going to be reading, writing, and arithmetic. So there's some like homeschool lingo for you. But I wanted to talk about, I've already talked about how we homeschool and why in my first homeschool video for this 2020 school year. I will link it somewhere, and you can go back and watch that, and that might give you a kind of understanding of why I'm choosing the types of materials that I am choosing. So we tend to fall into a classical, a branch of the classical method of education, commonly known as the Charlotte Mason style or flavor of homeschooling. And so a lot of times I'm choosing books, and we're literally just reading books or doing nature study or having an activity or an adventure out in the world. So it's known as like living books or a living education. And so that is the whole thing here. Instead of just having like a textbook and we read about this thing, we might have a story that is kind of on theme, and we can learn through the story or through some interesting books that are on that specific theme. So I want to talk about how I kind of go about, there's a lot of materials, you guys. Let me just turn this camera for a sec. I have stacks and stacks and stacks of stuff. I have stacks of books, and I don't know that you guys want to sit here and like have me show you every single book that we've collected over the past 4 years of homeschooling. And so if you're new to homeschooling, please don't go broke and go out and spend a whole bunch of money, because you really don't need to. We tend to collect things over time, and that is why we have some of the books that we have. We've just been collecting some of them over the last few years. And I have also decluttered several books too, because I'm a big believer that minimalism in a sense can be a major blessing to your homeschool. So I'm not going to talk about that right now. I would love to talk about that with you guys, of minimizing your home and, you know, creating systems and things in your home to kind of take some of that stress and anxiety off of you with homeschooling, because none of us are superwoman. So anyways, I'm off topic. So how do we decide what subjects we are going to teach our children for family subjects for that year? So there's a few different ways. So I will generally start by looking at a few different brands and curriculums, and also at Common Core, because it is completely relevant. Even though I don't choose to teach in a way that is Common Core aligned, it is relevant because that's what my children's peers are learning. So I look at what kids are in Common Core will be learning in the public school system. I would look at what my child might learn in history or science or religion at the local private school, which uses, I think, mostly Abeka and BJU Press. So I would reference those materials. I also might reference some brands that I really like Master Books or Beautiful Feet books, and see kind of what they might be teaching at certain levels. And that just kind of gives me some ideas. My husband and I were discussing what we wanted our kids to learn this year for history, science, geography, etc. And we decided we really needed to start introducing some U.S. history, and we wanted our children to have an understanding of how our country came to exist from multiple perspectives, and how our rights and freedoms in our home country, the United States, may be the same or vary or be completely different from another country. So they need to understand their rights and their freedoms. And so what we're going to focus on for history this year is going to be early U.S. history. So we're going to be starting even before the legends of the Vikings and all that kind of stuff in the European discovery of the New World. We're going to be talking about the native people to this land. And we're also going to be talking about an introduction to history. And I think that doing a quick little unit on Egypt is always a fun way to do an introduction to history, because there is just so much documentation of early history when it comes to Egypt. There's just so much that kind of we can use to introduce how we understand history. So whether that is something written on papyrus or carved into a stone or statues or monuments or whatever, Egypt has been a really good kind of starting point to start how we understand, how we document history, how we understand the past, because there's just so much history there. So basically, I, for history, went through and kind of looked at several timelines of U.S. history, from about European discovery, Viking legend, and also all the way through, I'm hoping to get in this 2020 through 2021 school year, I'm hoping to get somewhere at least around the Revolutionary War, maybe even as far as the Civil War. So this will kind of give us a good jump start on the early days of the United States of America. And then hopefully in the next school year, we'll be able to get as far as the civil rights movement. So that's kind of what we're going to be studying in U.S. history this year. And then when it came to science, I did a few things. I wrote just a running list. This is what I did, pencil and paper. And I wrote down topics that I would like for my kids, I would like to teach my children this year. And then I also went through and looked at a bunch of resources that we maybe haven't fully used yet. And so I wrote down those topics as well. Then I also kind of rummaged through our local library in person and also online. And I looked for history resources and science resources that are free and available for us to use. And I will want to make a note for a minute on the minimizing thing. If I think that a book is sturdy enough to survive being a library book, and we're not using it anymore, I will minimize it, declutter it at our house, and donate it to the local library. And if the local library chooses to keep that material, then not only is it available to other people to use in our community, but it's also still available to me. I can still go to the library and check it out for a week or two and then bring it back. And so if you are looking, if you're like, you've got these books that you aren't really using, you don't really think you're going to use, but then you're like, but what if I need it? Well, then see if your local library would want those books. And that way they are available to other people. You've decluttered them out of your house, but then you still have access to them. So there's a little tip. So after I got a list of basically a elementary age timeline of the United States and some kind of like points of what I wanted to hit in early U.S. history, and a running list of science topics and then some geography mixed in there. Then I basically broke them down into like themes or categories. And what I would do is I would have these two lists, a history list and a science list. And then I would make a kind of a main list. And basically I kind of made a guesstimate of, homeschooling year round, 52 weeks a year. I wrote in some breaks in there. And then what I did is I would grab a theme or a topic from the history list, and then I would grab a theme from the science list and grab a theme from the history list and grab a theme from the science list, and just had this rotating basically unit studies for the 52 weeks in the year, skipping weeks that we were going to take breaks, if that makes sense. And so I am not living by this list. I do not have like certain dates or certain weeks in our homeschool year. We're like, okay, this is week 3 and this is what we have to do. Instead, it's just a running list. So we did a Thailand unit. We did a flowers unit. We skipped ecosystems and like weather and seasons and all of that kind of stuff because when we were going to do that, our library was shut down. And so we are back going, and we've gone on to Egypt, and we'll come back to like ecosystems and things like that a little bit later. So I just have this running list, and we'll kind of go back and forth between topics. So we'll kind of just go back and forth between topics down the list. And if we get to a certain one and I'm just like, you know what, I'm not feeling it right now, then I'll just kind of like circle it and come back to it later. But yeah, I just have a list, and when we finish, we feel like we're satisfied learning about a certain topic and we've read all of our resources on that topic, then we will just mark it off that we finished it, and we'll go on to the next topic, if that makes sense. So here, I'll read some of them to you real quick. Okay. So, Thailand, flowers, ecosystems, Egypt, books about animals, Native Americans, bees, Vikings, then specifically Leif Erikson, ants, Christopher Columbus, horses, Pocahontas and Jamestown, birds. Then I have like kind of in parentheses, Mayflower, penguins, Mayflower, pilgrims, Squanto, Thanksgiving, like all kind of multiple things there. A space unit, space, colonial times, electricity, Benjamin Franklin, farming, George Washington, the human body, Revolutionary War, oceans. And then I also wrote in that around Christmas, I would like to do one of the Christmas Gather Round Homeschool Unit Studies just for that whole month of December. Then if we get to it, I would like for us to read some materials on Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War, and then the Wild West. And I have Buffalo Bill listed out to the side. Not sure what I was thinking there, but okay, that's what's written on the piece of paper. Okay, so that's our kind of running list of topics that we're going to just kind of be reading through materials based on these themes. And so right here, I have this running list. And then if we turn the page, I have a history and geography list. And so when we did Thailand, which was week number 1, I wrote Thailand, and then I just wrote all the resources that I have available to me, either I own or the library has, or are on YouTube, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, whatever. I have Netflix maybe. So I just wrote down all the resources that I had available to me to introduce Thailand. And then Egypt, same thing. And so basically that's just what I did. I made a little heading with the theme and wrote down all the resources that I have available to me to teach these certain themes or topics, right? So same thing for science, wrote a little heading of what the theme or the topic was, and then I wrote all the resources that were available to me. Don't think you have to really go in person and dig through your library. More than likely, your library has like an online resource where you can just type in certain keywords and it'll bring up a list of resources that they have available to you. And you might have to filter it if you're, looking at homeschooling. If you're looking at these materials for children, you may need to filter it by juvenile or children's department or whatever, however your library labels that. So I just list all the materials that I have available to me. This is what took the longest. was just writing all this stuff out. This probably took me just a couple days of spending a little time here and there, kind of just writing it all out. Basically, it's kind of like a brain dump. I'm just dumping it all into this notebook so that I don't have to think about it anymore. It's all written down, but it's not necessarily a plan. I'm not like, I don't have a certain date and a certain time that these things have to get done. It's just a running list. That was exhausting explaining that. So now I thought I would show you some of the materials that I have here in my home. So first I'm gonna go ahead and show you the materials that I have for the unit that we're on right now. And lucky you, we have some library books here with us. So currently we are doing an Egypt themed unit. And basically, like I've said before, I think that it's really interesting to use Egypt as an introduction to history. And I got this idea from The Story of the World, Volume 1. Now you can see we never got very far in it because my kids just had a hard time listening to it. I just don't think that they were quite ready for it. I think that I like this book. They just weren't really that interested. And I think it's because if you as a child had to choose between materials that look like this and materials that look like this, which one would you choose? My kids and I would both probably choose the more colorful materials. But the idea of introducing like what is history to my kids using Egypt as a starting place, I got from The Story of the World, because that's how they introduce what is history, is they take a lot of examples from Egypt and talk about like documentation on paper and on stone and on buildings and statues and archaeological finds. I have had a hard time saying that word. Anyways, and so I thought that was a really good idea. And so I've kind of done that. I do have Around the World with Picture Books. It does have an Egypt unit, and I would like to do some more units out of here at some point. We're just not going to do a ton of them because my library doesn't have a ton of these books, which means I would have to buy like hundreds of dollars in books to be able to do this whole unit. So whatever, anyways, but I would like to do more of these. So from my library, I found this really beautiful book called Egyptology, and it's kind of written like a journal, like these people are going out trying to find this legendary lost tomb, and they're using these notes that were left behind by someone's ancestors from a trip that they went on in November 1926. So it's really, really interesting. It's got a lot of like fold outs and pictures. It even has a board game built into it. You guys, this was at my library. Go to your library, explore your libraries, like go on the online Rolodex or whatever it's called and look and see what they have, because this book is not only beautiful, but it's really cool. This is what I've been reading to them at lunchtime every day when, like I said, their mouths are full and their ears are available. And then this is what my husband's been reading to them at bedtime. This is a Magic Tree House #3, Mummies in the Morning. And so if you are looking for like bedtime stories to pair with themes, so far we've been liking Magic Tree House books. They are really intended for children to read. So when my kids get a little bit older and they're a little more confident readers, I will probably make these assigned readers. But at this time, because they are made for kids to read, it makes for a really short read aloud at bedtime when we're just wanting them to get in the bed and we don't want to read for 20 minutes. It's just a couple pages. We just read one chapter and then we say go to sleep, right? So we like pairing these, like something to read at lunch, something to read at bedtime, and that's kind of how we're doing it. I also have this book. This is on the reading list for the Egypt unit in Around the World with Picture Books. See, there it is right there. And it's called The Day of Ahmed's Secret. I believe this is about a boy in Egypt that learns to write his name. Yes. But it's really a beautiful book, and I'm excited to read this to them. So the materials that I show you today, like hold up and show it to you, are going to mostly be like history, geography oriented. So I purchased this book. It's called North American Indians I liked this book. I think I saw a flip through of this maybe on Pepper and Pine. She has a lot of videos showing her resources for different units. And so I would highly suggest that you go look at her videos and all the materials that she's collected over the years for different unit studies. And some of them she's done multiple times. And so she also has a series called This or That. And so I think that's helpful too. So she teaches a little bit different than me, but she always has really great resources. So I like watching her channel for resources. I think this was a book that she had. It's called North American Indians. And I liked this one. I was trying to find books at my library. There are some books at my library, and I am planning on getting some of those. I think it's important before moving on in history to the European discovery of the Americas and European colonization that we acknowledge and recognize that this land has native people. And so my kids need to know that this land was not bare. There were like people living here before there were white people living here. So that's important for them to know. And so that is why before we go on to talking about Vikings or Christopher Columbus or any other like people group that came and tried to settle or colonize in the Americas, we need to acknowledge that there were already people living here. So my library has some really cute books on Vikings. If I can find images of those, I will pop them up on the screen for you. This is one that I bought that my library did not have, and it is from the Beautiful Feet U.S. History Collection. It is a Dulaire book. You're going to be seeing a bunch of Dulaire books. This is called Leif the Lucky. I've seen some mixed reviews on this book. People either love it or they hate it, but we're going to try. So we're going to read a bunch of books and materials about Vikings, and then after we read about Vikings, we're going to read about Leif the Lucky and his family's legendary discovery of the Americas. The next topic we're going to be hitting up is Christopher Columbus. And I know that this is a hard person. A lot of people have a lot of feelings about Christopher Columbus, but I am going to be reading some materials about Christopher Columbus, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of research so that I can choose my words carefully when introducing this person to them. We're going to be reading this book on Christopher Columbus, and there are also some books at our library. I am going to be watching some documentaries that are maybe made for adults on some of these topics that would, maybe be a little less censored for children. And then I'm going to be presenting some of this information in a very, Waldorf style to them. And then I'm going to also try to find some more kid-friendly documentaries and things about Christopher Columbus as well. So the next Dulaire book we're going to be using for history is called Pocahontas. And so on my list, I labeled it Pocahontas and Jamestown. So we'll probably get some books from our library on this as well. But basically in this book, we're going to be learning about Jamestown, but from the perspective of Pocahontas. And basically this goes through her entire life. This is like her life story. And I think it's very beautiful. And the thing about the Dulaire books is that they're told in story form. And that's it's kind of hard to find books like that tell history, that are telling history, but they're like wording it in a way that is like telling a child a story. That's what I thought Story of the World was going to be like. It does not feel like that to me. It still feels more like a textbook to me, which is fine. I like it. My kids just don't. The next book that I have on my list of materials is from a book collection called the American Story Series. And there are a lot of really beautifully made books in this series. I just wasn't certain that my kids would really want all of them. I wasn't really sure if I was ready to do all of the books in this series, but I definitely think in the future I want to come back around and get this entire series and use it like a history curriculum. So this is the New Americans, Colonial Times, 1620 to 1689. This is, once again, a lot of these materials are from the Beautiful Feet early US history in living books, primary grades, whatever. I'll flash it up on the screen. Yeah, another really colorful material, kind of told like a story, kind of told like a textbook, but it gives my kids something to, I like beautiful materials because I read to my kids at lunch a lot. It gives them something to look at while I am reading to them. So I like beautiful materials just so that they can have something to look at while they're listening. So next I'm going to be doing one of these two. This is Benjamin Franklin. I think I might start with this one. I'm not sure because these people were alive at the same time. So Benjamin Franklin, also George Washington. Before we do the Benjamin Franklin unit, I think we're going to do a science unit on electricity. So we're kind of getting a twofer on that one. But then I'm going to be checking out a lot of materials from my library on the topic of the Revolutionary War. Now that is going to be brought up in these materials as well because these two fellows were alive during that time, and so that's going to be brought up in these books. But I do think that I'm going to probably need to read some separate materials to my kids on specifically on the Revolutionary War. So my library has quite a bit of books on the Revolutionary War. Also, we have the Liberty Kids DVD series, which they like and they enjoy watching. This is also on, I think, Amazon Prime. I think this is something that might be free, I'm pretty sure. And Amazon Prime has a lot of documentaries and things like that that are, you know, colonial times, Revolutionary War times, just a lot of documentaries and stuff that are on Amazon Prime. So just go look at all the materials, you guys. There's just so much. I just can't show it all to you because we would be here forever. But that's where I look for stuff. Amazon Prime, because I already have that. Maybe Disney Plus, YouTube. Just go look at the resources you already have and see what's there. Also, I wanted to mention there are a bunch of Magic Treehouse books that kind of pop up at different places in time. I really like storybooks like that are a fictional story set in a factual place and time. And so I tend to throw Magic Treehouse books and some other similar books in as bedtime stories. So when we get to the Revolutionary War, there are a couple of books that are around that time period. I think there is a Magic Treehouse book that's like more colonial. And then I think there's a Magic Treehouse book that is more Revolutionary War, American independence, and that kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of books. Go check out all those books if you're wanting to kind of do this. So very quickly, I'm gonna show you guys the last few history materials that I have here at my house. I have tons of materials at the library. Use the library. So I have the Dulaire Abraham Lincoln. I actually read this by myself one day because I wanted to, and it's interesting. I like it. Wings for Pear. Don't know if we're going to get this. I don't know if we're going to get to this. I actually think that this might take place around a world war. And also I want to note to you guys, sometimes if you get a book that is set in a factual place and time, whether it is fiction or nonfiction, there will oftentimes be information in the back of the book that is worth a read or a highlight. Also, I have Buffalo Bill. So I have like a whole huge collection of Usborne books. Not huge, like I don't sell them, so I don't have like a big like display of them in my house, but I do have quite a few, and I like to use them as like a mini unit study. So I am not going to show you every single book that I have because I think that would take ridiculously too long to do that. But just know that I don't sell it, but for science, I do think that's a really great place to look for materials. So they have a few that I like to use like a unit study. So for example, these little books, these are actually supposed to be science readers. So this might be a material you would assign to your child to read, but that's not how I'm using it. What I will do is at lunch, I will just sit down and read maybe 2 or 3 pages to my kids, maybe just 1 2-page spread, or maybe several if they're really into it. And I'll just sit down and read a few pages to them at lunch. And yeah, so we just kind of use it like a little mini unit study, and then we would watch some YouTube videos about horses, and maybe we would find some bedtime stories about horses, and that's it. We just did a unit study on horses. It was great. So I have a little collection of those types of science readers, and I like them. I like to use them just like little mini tiny unit studies. I also have these books. Now these I think are the Scholastic version, so they're like the cheaper version. Yeah. But I also like to use these as kind of little unit studies as well. And so basically I would just read like a 2-page spread, like 1 or 2 pages. Basically I would just read 1 or 2 pages at lunch to them every day. And yeah, it's just a little mini unit study. Like this one is about the ocean, and so we would just read through it until we finished it, and we would watch a bunch of videos and documentaries on the ocean. Maybe we might find an experiment, I don't know, and then that's it. We did it. We did a unit study. We learned about the ocean, and it was great, and we all enjoyed it. So here are some other things that are not Usborne that I thought you might like. I really love educational coloring books for little mini unit studies. So these are books these are by Master Books actually. And I like them. They have stickers in the middle. So when you finish each section, they can get the picture, they can get the sticker and stick it on the picture that they finished or whatever. But basically we would open to that page and they color it while I read the information at the bottom. Now, here's the deal. There's lots of factual information in here, like scientific information, but it's kind of presented in almost like a devotional form. So I think that's interesting. Oh, I also have that indescribable devotion that counts as science too. And then finally, we have this one. Now, we have used this one as a bedtime story, and it is the Sassafras Science Adventures, Volume 1, Zoology. And we kind of stopped reading it. My kids were getting to where we could tell that they were kind of getting bored with it and they weren't listening. So we stopped, but they have asked for us to start reading it again. So we have about this much left. And basically, would be a little unit study. So we did not get like the guide and the journals and the workbooks and all the things that you can get to go with it, which is really awesome and really great. And I think if we do this again, I would probably get the audio version and maybe get all the things that go with it. But that's not how we're reading it. We're just reading this as a bedtime story. And I like doing it that way. My kids like doing it that way. So that's what we did. We would just read it as a bedtime story. So I think moving forward, either I would buy the audio version and play it for my kids during the day, maybe while they were having playtime or something like that, or have my husband read this to them at night, because by then my vocal cords are like done. And so have my husband read this to them as like a story at night, and then we could color the coloring sheets during the day and talk about it and do some review questions or stuff during the day. But I do like this, and there are some other levels of this. I think there's maybe like 4 or 5 other volumes, and I do like it. And I would actually recommend this, or recommend that you would maybe give it a try, listen to some samples maybe. But it's a story that has, I like things like this. That's a story that is set in a factual place and time. And so they're learning either history or science through this story. Do you get what I'm saying? Whew, that was a lot of materials. So did I like make any sense? I've got like, there's like books everywhere. Did that make any sense, you guys? I don't know if that was helpful at all. That's why this video was last. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Please leave them in the comments and I will try to answer you. If there's any other videos that you want me to like elaborate more on something, let me know. And then maybe we can do kind of a video maybe like in January of like how it's going. Just let me know the kind of content that you want to see on this channel. Moving forward, so the next few videos, I'm thinking I'm probably going to be talking at some point about decluttering, minimizing, and how this might benefit your home starting homeschooling. And then also I kind of wanted to show you guys my garden, if that's something you would be interested. if that's something you'd be interested in seeing. So thanks for hanging out with me. I hope that your homeschool year is really awesome. Bless you and good luck.